Before we dive into one of the most life-changing psychological concepts you'll ever learn, I need you to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. What you're about to discover will completely transform how you see relationships, boundaries, and your own personal power. This isn't just theory. This is practical psychology that will change your life starting today. Have you ever noticed something fascinating about certain people? They don't chase anyone, they don't explain themselves constantly, and they don't seem desperate for attention or approval. Yet somehow, everyone wants to be around them. Everyone respects them. Everyone seems drawn to their energy. What's their secret? Today, we're going to uncover the hidden psychology behind strategic withdrawal and why being less available can actually make you more powerful than you ever imagined. Picture this scenario. You have a friend who always responds to your messages within minutes, who's always free when you need them, who never says no to your requests. Now imagine another person who takes time to respond, who isn't always available, who chooses carefully when and how to engage with others. Which person do you value more? If you're honest, it's probably the second one. And there's a deep psychological reason for this that goes back to some of the most important discoveries in human psychology. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, understood something profound about human nature. He discovered that we have what he called psychic energy, a limited resource that we can either spend wisely or waste carelessly. Every time you react immediately to someone's demands, every time you drop everything to help someone who doesn't truly appreciate you, every time you explain yourself to people who aren't really listening, you're draining this precious energy. And once it's gone, you're left feeling empty, frustrated, and somehow less than yourself. Jung also taught us about something called individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self, rather than just a reflection of what others want you to be. This process requires something that most people are terrified of: the willingness to stand alone, to be misunderstood, to choose your own path even when others disapprove. But here's what's fascinating. When you begin this journey of individuation, when you start protecting your energy and being more selective with your availability, something magical happens. People start treating you differently. Think about water for a moment. When water is everywhere, flowing freely without any boundaries, it has no power. But when that same water is contained, when it's channeled and directed, it can move mountains. Your energy, your attention, your presence works exactly the same way. When you make yourself constantly available to everyone, you become like water without boundaries, powerless and easily taken for granted. But when you learn to contain your energy, to be selective about where you invest it, you become a force that can't be ignored. The ancient philosopher Lao Tzu understood this principle thousands of years ago when he wrote about the power of emptiness, about how the space inside a cup is what makes it useful, not the cup itself. In psychological terms, it's your unavailability, your mystery, your boundaries that create space for others to truly appreciate and respect you. When you're always there, always responding, always available, there's no space for appreciation to grow. But here's where it gets really interesting from a psychological perspective. When you're constantly available, you're not just draining your own energy, you're actually training others to disrespect you. Think about it this way. What happens when something is always available? We stop valuing it. This is basic human psychology. We naturally place higher value on things that are scarce, things that require effort to obtain, things that we might lose if we don't appreciate them. Jung discovered something else that's crucial to understanding this dynamic. He found that people often project their own unconscious needs and desires onto others. When someone gets upset because you're not immediately available, when they try to make you feel guilty for having boundaries, they're often revealing their own psychological dependencies and insecurities. They've become accustomed to using your predictable availability as a way to avoid dealing with their own inner emptiness or anxiety. This connects to another important psychological concept from Jung called the shadow. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge or integrate. When people become angry or frustrated because you're not constantly available to meet their needs, they're often encountering their own shadow, their own capacity for selfishness and emotional dependence that they don't want to face. Niccolò Machiavelli, though known primarily as a political philosopher, understood human psychology deeply. He recognized that people naturally respect what they cannot fully control or predict. When you make yourself too available, too predictable, too eager to please, you remove the element of mystery and challenge that keeps relationships interesting and balanced. You become not a person to be respected, but a resource to be used. This doesn't mean becoming cold or cruel. It means becoming conscious about how you invest your most precious resource, your life energy. Every yes you give to something that doesn't truly matter is a no to something that could be meaningful. Every time you rush to respond to someone who consistently takes you for granted, you're saying no to your own peace and well-being. The psychology of strategic withdrawal works because it forces both you and others to confront reality. When you stop being constantly available, people are forced to examine their own motivations for seeking your attention. Are they reaching out because they genuinely care about you, or because they need something from you? Are they interested in mutual exchange and growth, or are they simply looking for someone to solve their problems or boost their ego? Jung taught that healthy relationships require what he called psychological differentiation. This means that each person maintains their own identity, their own boundaries, their own center of power. When you're constantly available, you lose this differentiation. You become enmeshed with others' needs and emotions to the point where you can't tell where you end and they begin. This isn't love or friendship. It's a form of psychological fusion that ultimately serves no one. Think about the most attractive, magnetic people you know. Chances are they have something in common. They don't chase approval, they don't explain themselves constantly, and they seem comfortable being alone with themselves. This isn't because they're naturally gifted or lucky. It's because they understand, whether consciously or not, the psychology of value and scarcity. They've learned to protect their energy and be selective about how they share it. But here's the part that many people struggle with. Learning to be strategically unavailable often means going through a period of loneliness and misunderstanding. When you start setting boundaries, when you stop responding immediately to every demand, when you begin choosing yourself over constantly pleasing others, some people won't like it. They may accuse you of being selfish, cold, or changed. This is actually a positive sign. It means you're breaking free from the patterns that kept you trapped in relationships based on your usefulness rather than your worth. Jung called this process individuation, and he warned that it's often a lonely path. But he also promised that it's the only path to authentic self-respect and genuine connection with others. When you stop being available to everyone, you become available to yourself. You start hearing your own thoughts, feeling your own feelings, and discovering your own desires without the constant interference of others' needs and expectations. The silence that comes with strategic withdrawal serves another important psychological function. It creates space for reflection and growth. When you're constantly reacting, responding, and engaging, you don't have time to process your experiences or learn from them. But when you create space through selective availability, you give yourself the gift of perspective. You can see patterns in your relationships, recognize your own triggers and responses, and make conscious choices about how you want to engage with the world. This process also helps you develop what psychologists call emotional regulation. Instead of reacting automatically to every emotional trigger, you learn to pause, breathe, and choose your response. This isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about becoming the conscious director of your emotional life, rather than a victim of every stimulus that comes your way. One of the most powerful aspects of strategic withdrawal is how it affects your relationship with yourself. When you stop seeking constant validation and approval from others, you're forced to develop an internal source of worth and meaning. This is where true confidence comes from. Not from how others see you, but from how you see yourself when no one else is watching. Jung understood that the goal isn't to become isolated or disconnected from others. The goal is to engage with others from a place of choice rather than compulsion, from strength rather than neediness, from wholeness rather than emptiness. When you interact with others because you choose to, not because you have to, the quality of those interactions becomes completely different. People can sense when you're engaging with them from a place of genuine choice versus obligation or desperation. When you have boundaries, when you're selective with your time and energy, when you're comfortable being alone, you radiate a different kind of energy. You become someone worth knowing rather than someone who needs to be known. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It requires patience, courage, and the willingness to be misunderstood. You'll need to resist the urge to explain yourself constantly, to rush back into old patterns when relationships feel uncertain, to sacrifice your boundaries for temporary comfort or approval. But every time you choose yourself, every time you honor your own needs and energy, you're building psychological muscle that will serve you for the rest of your life. The beautiful paradox of strategic withdrawal is that by becoming less available to everyone, you become more available to the right people. The relationships that survive your new boundaries are the ones worth having. The people who respect your need for space and self-care are the ones who truly care about your well-being, not just what you can do for them. Remember, you are not responsible for managing other people's emotions or filling their emptiness. You are not obligated to be constantly available just because someone wants your attention. Your energy, your time, your presence are precious gifts, and you have every right to be selective about how you share them. As you begin this journey of strategic withdrawal and conscious boundary setting, you may find that some relationships fade away. This isn't a loss, it's a clearing. You're making space for connections that honor your worth and support your growth. You're choosing quality over quantity, depth over surface, authenticity over performance. The path of individuation that Jung described isn't about becoming perfect or reaching some final destination. It's about becoming real, becoming whole, becoming true to yourself regardless of whether others understand or approve. And this journey begins with the simple but revolutionary act of becoming less available to everyone so that you can become more available to yourself. If this exploration of strategic withdrawal and psychological boundaries has resonated with you, I want to hear about it in the comments below. Share your experiences with setting boundaries and protecting your energy. And if you found value in understanding how your availability affects your relationships and self-worth, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might benefit from these insights. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the fascinating world of human psychology. Until next time, remember that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. And the journey to authentic power begins the moment you stop being available to everyone and start being present for yourself.